Hello and welcome to A Woman's Heart. I am looking forward to this conversation with Abby Kuykendall because we're going to be talking about hospitality. So hopefully the hospitality here on the podcast will be worthy of you.
Well, it's already been hospitable the first few minutes that we've been chatting behind the scenes. So I'm excited about the conversation. It is a joy to be here.
Well, good. I am glad. I am looking forward to this conversation as well. Now, Abby, we're going to get into your book of all about the hospitality, but before we dive into that, I would love to get to know you a little bit better and to have my audience get to know you a little bit better. So, tell us something about yourself, including something fun that isn't normally in your bio.
Yeah, well, I'm from Arkansas. I grew up in the South. I've always been in the South. Love to travel and got married 2 years ago. Have a wonderful little 16-month-old and little boy, and have one on the way. So that is, just
Congratulations.
always so fun. And if you're doing the math, yes, we got pregnant very fast, and we have been trying to wrap everything up as quickly as we can, just because we are both on the older end. In my first book, The Living Table, I talk about this a lot, but I was single up until 36, and so that is quite the age to get married, especially in the Bible Belt and in the South when everyone gets married right
Yes.
out of college. That wasn't my story, and that's kind of how hospitality, kind of the Lord spoke to me and cared for my heart during that time, was hospitality and community. And so, but we got married late, and so we wanted to have lots of kids. So that just meant we were off to the races really fast. So,
Yes.
but it's such a joy. And the one thing that's not, or something that's not in my bio is I've always loved sports. I want to be athletic so bad. I wish that was my spiritual
Hey.
gift. I wish that the Lord would have like given me long legs or amazing endurance, but that's just not in my cards. And so I mean, really convinced the coaches in my high school to allow me to be the hydration specialist. And it was like
Okay.
I had a monogrammed shirt and a hat. I mean, you talk about someone that was proud to be the water girl, and it was me. Well, when I went to college, I still wanted to be really involved in sports. So I auditioned to be the mascot. And I was the mascot at my university for 3 of the 4 years I was there.
Oh,
Last year, I
good.
wanted to just be a student or a friend or, like on the sidelines and not sweat during the football games. But
I've seen some of those
yeah,
mascot costumes, and that's got to be really uncomfortable on
you know
some of those
what?
hot
It
days.
really gave me an appreciation for all of the mascots in the world and how much they endure for our joy.
Yes. Yes,
I
indeed.
don't know that I was like an A plus plus mascot, or I don't know that I brought a ton of joy to people, but I had a lot of fun and I was always involved in sports in some way. And so, for all of those non-athletic listeners out there, you can be involved without being on the field.
Okay. Well, and it was funny. I had a conversation earlier today with someone, and they were in the marching band. I said I was in the marching band. So they would say when someone asked if they were athletic, that was like, "Oh, I took to the gridiron every single Friday night."
Yep, there you go. I mean, hey, it takes all kinds, right?
Yes,
I
yes,
love it.
it does. And it sounds like being a hydration specialist and a mascot definitely laid the groundwork for your passion for hospitality, even if it wasn't a gift. We're going to get into that too. And you mentioned that since you were single for a little longer than a lot of your friends, that
Mhm.
hospitality played a big part
Yeah.
in filling up your heart and filling up that space for community. And is that where I suspect this is kind of where that hospitality bug bit you?
Yeah, it did. I think that when I was going through singleness, it was kind of the antidote. It was the cure for me. It was the thing that gave me purpose in building community and investing in people.
Hmm.
And I moved 5 times in 4 years right out of college, just with different jobs. And so I look at that as the Lord's gift, in that I got to create almost a template to how to build a community. And I
Hmm.
kept having the opportunity to test it and refine it and test it again and refine it. And so, um, I can say that, I love to talk about hospitality in the home, and I love to talk about bringing people in and investing in your community. But for some people, we have to travel or move communities, and investing in people long term is just not a part of the story that we have. And so I do want to give hope to people that do have to move or rebuild their community, that it is possible. And what I talk about in my book, Let the Biscuits Burn, is very, I guess, timely and practical to building those rhythms in your life of investing in community, even if it is for a short time.
Yeah. Well, and you mentioned the title of your book, Let the Biscuits Burn,
Yeah.
which is not necessarily a typical cookbook or hospitality
Yeah.
title. So, how did you come up with that as a title to entice people in for hospitality?
I speak a lot, and I go and travel and talk to women's groups and stuff. And one of the things that I hear a lot is, I just can't cook, or I get so distracted in the kitchen, or I'm just a horrible host. And one time I was having a conversation with a woman, and she was going off about, oh, I just had so many things and going on, and da 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 da. And I just said, let it burn. And it kind of stuck with me. And I just, sometimes you have those conversations and you're like, you replay them back in your mind. Like, was that the right thing to say? Did I encourage her enough? Was that hopeful? Like, what was that about? And I just sat with that. And I was like, wait, let the biscuits burn. That is catchy. And
Yeah.
so, I prayed about that title. I loved that title. There's quite the story with that title. I actually had pitched it to several agents before landing with the agent that helped me with this book. And they were all like, that title is not great and you need to change the title. And so when I landed with Carly, my current editor at Alive, she was like, well, yeah, let's keep the title. I had changed it to something else. And she goes, but we can keep that in our pocket when we have a conversation with HarperCollins. We can bring it up. And I brought it up, and the editor was like, wait, why have you been sitting on that? Like, that is such a great title. And so we just kind of landed on it, kind of haphazardly, kind of, it wasn't what I had planned to go in with. I had already kind of, the Lord had rested it in my heart. And, sometimes that happens. The Lord anoints you, but doesn't appoint you yet. And so,
Yeah, there
he
is
had
that as well.
yeah, he had anointed the title, but he had a specific plan for when he was going to appoint the time for it to
Yes, yes,
come forward. So,
indeed. Well, and I think it gets kind of to the heart of the matter that you make a point of over and over, and I'm going to give you a chance to expand on this. There's a difference between hospitality and entertaining.
yeah.
And I think entertaining can be very intimidating. We get all the Pinterest perfect ideas. We get Martha Stewart in our head. We think we have to spend lots and lots of money on this beautiful, you know, piece of meat and gorgeous sides and five-course meals and
Yeah.
an amazing flambé dessert or something like that, or flambe, whichever the and it's not the same. The hospitality
Yeah.
is not the same as entertaining. And so I would love for you to give us some of those differences and the important thing to remember behind each of those.
Yeah, so I think that, I have a really cool chart in the book. And if I could flip automatically to it, I would pull it up.
Yeah.
But try to do some of it from
I'll see
memory.
if I can while you're talking.
I did write it. So, but entertaining is really all about impressing others. It is when you are focused on everything but the people. And you could, I
Mhm.
mean, I'm not saying that you're not thinking about the people, but when the pressure is put, yes, there it is.
There it
When
is.
when the pressure is put on the tablescape, or it's put on the environment, or it's put on the food you make, I think that is when we get into the realm of entertaining.
Hmm.
And Martha Stewart has an incredible quote. I'm going to butcher it because it's not in front of me, but she has a quote about entertaining and how entertaining is about making everything perfect. And I think that that's it. She hit the nail on the head. She is right in that entertaining is about making everything feel or seem perfect. And that is just not the message we get from Jesus and his ministry in scripture when
No.
he's talking about Mary and Martha, or he's talking about, coming into your home or bringing people to the table. He says, like, come as you are. Like, I will make everything perfect. It's not about you. And so I think if we can have that heart, that's where hospitality gets to kind of come to the surface and play the pivotal role, is when we are serving others, when we are putting others above the food, above the table, above the environment. And so it's really impressing others or serving others. And one is about self, and one is about kind of selfless, this love of others. And I write in the book, I think in this whole kind of deep dive into hospitality that I've spent the last few years in writing this book on, I really feel like hospitality, you cannot love someone without being hospitable. If you think about all of the things, the acts of service, the words of effort, like all of these things are putting others first, serving others.
Yeah.
And I really believe that that comes from a hospitable heart. So maybe you might not have done the action of hospitality and inviting people into your home and cooking
Mhm.
a meal or whatever. But if you think about how you have loved others, most likely it has come from little moments of hospitality with buried within your heart. And that's where I get to hospitality as a spiritual discipline, not a gift. It can be a gift, but that's where I get like the spiritual discipline, the rhythm of life. If it's centered around hospitality, then love is automatically going to flow in everything you do.
Yeah, and I love that the idea is about loving others and it doesn't have to look pretty. It can
Yeah.
I'm thinking of a time when I got a phone call many years ago and there was someone that said your husband was too afraid to call you himself. He told me to call you. You have 12 people showing up in your backyard to grill hamburgers and hot dogs in about 15 minutes. And
I
I'm,
love it.
oh, okay.
Fantastic.
So yeah, it wasn't pretty. We just threw burgers and dogs on the grill. We had plastic plates that we used, and we just sat outside and ate and hung out and chatted. And so it was not perfect at all, but it was hospitable. And you mentioned the difference between hospitality as a gift versus a discipline because I have a friend in particular that I believe she has the gift of hospitality.
Yeah.
She can somehow take a couple of napkins and three flowers and make an amazing display in the middle
I
of a
love it.
table that I'm like, how did you do that? She can just come up with something and somehow it looks beautiful. It's very simple. It's very quick, but she just makes it look beautiful
I
and
know when people use like paper plates and like that paper confetti streamer stuff, and it looks like somebody has come in and decorated their home. And I'm like, this is paper. Like, how did you do this?
yes. Yes. But as we're talking, the hospitality is really more about serving others
It is.
and the connection and the
Yeah.
community. And so I would love for you to talk a little bit more about, even though you don't have the gift of hospitality,
Yeah.
how can you discipline yourselves and why? I mean, why
Yeah.
is that even important? It's not just about feeding people or
Right.
serving people by giving them something to eat. There's a lot more to it, and why God says we should be hospitable.
Yeah. And I know I misspoke I missed a word earlier. It's not
Okay.
just a spiritual discipline, it's also a spiritual gift. So it is both.
Yes,
Some
it
of us don't
can
have
be
the
both.
gift.
Or,
Yes.
or,
And
or,
or
and or.
so I want people to hear that loudly because I don't have the spiritual gift. If I take the spiritual gift assessment, hospitality is like 8 on the list. I am administration and teaching real hard. And then if you look at the spiritual disciplines, it's worship, it's prayer, it's meditation. Lump hospitality in that because I believe that it is an expression of the character of God, and we want to draw closer to that. And how do we draw closer to the character of God? We mimic his heart, and his heart is to love and serve others. And
Yeah.
so that's where hospitality kind of is grounded for me. And what I have learned through the epidemic of loneliness, through the
Yes.
moments and bouts of just being alone and not having intentional people to come alongside me and cheer me on just in life,
Mhm.
is that hospitality is the number one conduit to forming those tight, very close relationships.
Yeah.
And so, yes, you might be able to do it selfishly, but let me tell you, your heart will become selfless pretty quickly if you start practicing. It's like
Yeah.
I'm not going to run the marathon. I'm going to walk it, and then you start going and you're like, "Okay, I can run a little bit." And then you start running more, and then you start running more. And that's kind of how hospitality is. That's how any spiritual discipline is, in my opinion. It's that
Yeah.
first step of obedience.
Yeah.
And for me, it was inviting one girl over to my house and making a meal. It turned out awful, but that one girl invited another girl, and those two girls encouraged me to invite 4 more girls. And then we had a Bible study in my very small 600 square foot apartment without a huge table. We were sitting on the floor. And in that, excuse me, in that season of life, God took my loneliness and he said, I just need a small step of obedience. I don't need you to invite 15 girls over. I need you to invite one. And so I invited one, and he turned that small step of obedience into a Bible study that really encouraged me and shaped me and took me on to the next phase stage of life. And that is the blessing of obedience, in that we don't know what God's going to do with it. He just asks us to show up, and he's like, let me show out. And so when we think about the spiritual discipline of hospitality,
Mhm.
it is that small step of obedience of saying, I'm going to invite one person over,
Yeah.
and I'm going to do it intentionally. And I think that if you are really thoughtful about who to invite,
Hmm.
the Lord will put someone on your heart. And it's always mind blowing to me that, like, oh my gosh, when I invited that person over, the conversation actually went to this place. And that is actually what my heart needed. Like, I had no, instead of inviting your best friend or your sister, or,
Yeah.
there's a verse in Luke, and it says something along the lines of, like, you think that you need a pat on the back because you invited your mother over, you invited your friends over. Like, even my enemies do that.
Yeah.
Like, and like, that's not hospitality. You need to invite the stranger over. And I'm not saying invite someone you don't know, but when you sit back, and what is a stranger to you, it might be somebody that just doesn't think or act or look or vote or talk like you. And
Yeah.
so I think that when we can invite those people over and allow God to kind of work in that, that's where we see kind of this true life change and this true intimate relationship be formed.
Yeah. Well, and I like that you pointed out it started with inviting one person, because
Yeah.
I think one of the other misconceptions we can have about hospitality or entertaining is it has to be a lot of people. And there's
Right.
some people, the idea of having 10 people in one space is so scary to them. They're like, no,
Yeah.
and never, 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 never. But they could have a one-on-one with
Yeah.
someone. And I'm thinking too, I like to go out to coffee. I don't necessarily bring them to my house. It's just
Yeah.
that getting together. It's making that connection that is so important, whether it is in your home, which is special, or
Yeah.
whether it is going for a picnic, going to the park. It's that
Yeah.
community connection getting together in a hospitable manner. At least it is in my mind.
Yeah. And I write about some of the practical tips
Hmm.
on like how to kind of integrate hospitality in your own life. And for me, there are 3 ways every month and when I look at my month at the very beginning of the month, I set aside time and space to pray for these 3 different people. One is a couple that me and my husband are going to go to dinner with, and that is twice a month. So, twice that month, I'm going to be intentional about going to dinner with that one couple. And that one couple, it might be for the next 3 months, but I do it month by month. And then the next person is a single person, and that could be a widow or a divorcee or an empty nester. It could be that could take a lot of shapes and forms, but that's a coffee date. And that is an intentional person from my community, from church, or from my son's school that I want to invest in. And we go to coffee 3 times that month.
Okay.
And then the last person is a mother that has a young child or a couple of young children. And we try to do 2 play dates a month. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but when you look at it in the grand scheme of things, that's 7 hospitable moments that I'm praying
Hmm.
through, that I'm being intentional with, and that I'm trying to cultivate relationships and invite God intentionally into those spaces. And
Yeah.
so I think that if we can begin to think that way, like you said, it's not about the big dinner party, we can get there.
Yeah.
We are about to enter this space
Hmm.
of Friendsgiving and Christmas parties and New Year's parties and Super Bowl. It's going to be busy, and big
Yes.
parties have a place.
Hmm.
When you're trying to cultivate the discipline or the rhythm of hospitality in your life, sometimes it just looks like setting aside intentional moments,
Yeah.
like coffee date with someone 3 times, or a play date with a mom with a
Hmm.
child that's like like I don't think that we make it way too hard, like you said, Pinterest and Martha Stewart and Chip and Joanna Gaines, and it just spirals out of control at that point. And that's what the
Yeah.
enemy honestly wants, right? Like
Hmm.
the enemy wants us to get in our thoughts and
Yeah.
slow us down.
Yeah, he does. Well, and I like because those times of hospitality really help to make the connections between you and that person. And then maybe we do grow to where we're inviting a couple of more people where then we get to connect to them and we don't know what God can do with those connections. We
Yeah,
maybe mix as I call it, when we invite a variety of people from different areas of our life. I call it mixing the worlds.
I love it. I love it.
Because you have people that you know from church, people that you know from the neighborhood, people that you may know from work, or people that you may know from a mom's group, and they may not know each other, but you don't know how God wants to connect them. And if you can mix the
Exactly.
worlds, there may be a connection there that God really, really wants to use. And I loved all the practical things that you did put in the book. You put a lot of practical things in
Yeah.
there. And you also tackled some of the excuses, which you've touched on a little bit. But I
Yeah.
would love to just tackle maybe one or two of the most common excuses
Yeah.
that you hear from people for not practicing hospitality.
Right now, I'm really hearing, oh my gosh, I can't. I have too many kids and my house is a mess and crazy because it back to school and it was the summer and everything. And so it's like I can't wrangle my whole house to
Hmm.
invite people in. And I just want to say, hey, when you invite people into your mess, that is like the number one way to go deep, fast, to be vulnerable and open, and to create
Yeah.
intimate relationships.
Hmm.
And I have not ever once brought someone into my chaos and it not left a fruitful conversation that encouraged me for days, if not weeks, months later.
Hmm.
So I really encourage you, if you're saying that to yourself, my kids are crazy. I get it, man. We have toys everywhere. We have 3 dogs that shed like it's their job,
Oh,
and our
wow.
and our house is chaotic. I mean, right now we have a mattress in our kitchen because our bathroom flooded. So like inviting someone over right now is just like, if it were up to Martha Stewart, would be out of the question. But hey, I just had, over the summer, that mattress was in my kitchen and I had a baby shower. So you can do it. I am here as a living testament that the Lord will bless your small step of obedience. Invite people in. The second excuse I hear a lot is, ugh, but I can't cook. Let's just go out. And that's fine. Go out to eat. But you do not do your quiet time in a football stadium. That's all I'm going to say. So you cannot have meaningful, you can, but it's really hard to have meaningful, intimate, vulnerable conversation in the middle of a restaurant. In that same way, it's kind of hard in a coffee shop. It's a little bit easier in a coffee shop,
Yeah.
but I would always choose the home over anything external. And so if you can't cook, you need to pick up the living table because there are lots of tips and tricks in that cookbook. But also, I think our grocery stores have done an impeccable job at
Yeah.
creating very quick appetizers, frozen things, tips and tricks to put things together. They've created packets, and so there's no excuse out there for bad food. I mean, the book is called Let the Biscuits Burn, so I'm not going to be your cheerleader when it comes to, hey, your food has to be perfect. But I'm sitting here eating a burned lunch because I forgot that I had cooked it. So cool. Like just life gets in the way, but it's
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It
And that's
does.
that's the mess and that's the chaos that people are like, oh, you're not perfect. Oh, you're like me. Oh,
Mhm.
Martha, I watched her Netflix documentary, and if you've not watched it, I would 10 out of 10 go watch it just for the kind of comparison of entertaining versus hospitality.
Yeah.
And the documentary just talks about how she had this perfect vision of what bringing people together needed to look like, but she almost missed the heart of it.
Yeah.
And so she was always like, I mean, I was depressed, I was lonely, I was like, I didn't have deep connection. And it's like, that's it. Like, that's it.
Yeah.
If you,
That's the point
if
of
you,
hospitality.
right, if you try to put on this air of perfection, you miss God's presence in it all.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's hard for people to relate to that because no matter how
Yeah.
good we look like on the inside, chances are there's at least one or two things going on wonky on the inside. I'm
For
going to go out
sure.
on a limb here. And I'll speak for myself, if nobody else. No matter how
Yeah.
good I look on the outside, I can be a mess on the inside, and we never know what's going on in somebody's life, in their head, in their heart,
And
and
isn't it true that, like, if you're thinking it or if you're going through it, there is somebody else that's going
yeah.
through, like, you are not patient zero.
No,
Like,
you are
you,
not the only one.
you are not the only one going through something, but you won't ever know
Yeah.
unless you're vulnerable and authentic and
Yeah.
you invite people into it.
Yeah. Well, I hope this encourages people to take that up. And there was another question that I had, and because one of the questions that I always ask is, what would you say to encourage someone to pursue the passion that God has placed in their heart?
Yeah.
And in that pursuing their calling or their purpose, maybe theirs isn't hospitality, but I still think it plays a part. So, how would you say doing the spiritual discipline of
Yeah.
hospitality and creating that community would play into anybody's call or purpose?
You know what? I think that when we in any discipline and anything that we are doing, if we are doing it out of obedience, we are building not only the muscle of the thing we're doing. So it's not like we're just building the muscle of obedience and hospitality. We are building the muscle of obedience. And that's the heart that God wants.
Yeah.
And if we can practice the discipline of obedience and we can get good at just obeying God, then whatever your purpose or your calling is in life, like that is going to become more evident and kind of the Lord will begin to weave your story together. You do not have to be in the right place at the right time doing the right thing in order for your purpose or your calling to be on display and for the Lord to get the glory. You just have to be obedient. And I think that in this kind of quest for hospitality that I have been on over the last decade of my life, that is something that has been so freeing to me is that, oh, you mean I don't have to look in my contacts book and pray over like, which person do I invite? No. God's like, I'm going to put that person on your heart and then I just need you to be obedient. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can do
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
And gosh, there's so much freedom in living an obedient life, glorifying God.
Yeah. No, I like that. And there are times when he will bring people to mind. Well, is there anything else that you would say to encourage someone to pursue the passion that God has placed in their heart?
Yeah, I just, for me, my passions change constantly, like I was talking about in high school, I wanted to be a basketball player, and then it was the hydration specialist, and then it was the mascot, and then I went on and wanted to get married but wasn't married for another 15 years. So like my passions have morphed and changed. And I would say like lean into God and don't ever second guess where he has you in that waiting period, or that period where you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm, floundering around. Those can be some of the most fruitful times for you to spend with God to really deep dive into his character and who he wants you to be. I was reading a book and I wish I remembered what book is just coming to my mind as I'm saying this, but it was talking about how scripture was written for us to experience more of God, not to give us the playbook for life.
Mm,
And when you read scripture and when you study God with the mindset or the heart that I just want to get to know you, God, then it starts to impact how you make all of your decisions. And
yeah.
so I would really like those that are pursuing different passions, like even if that passion hasn't come to fruition yet, sit in that waiting period and just learn more about God, because in the learning, he is shaping you to be prepared for whatever that next passion is, that next
Yeah.
thing that he wants you to do.
Yeah. No, I love that. And Abby, if somebody wants to connect with you, they want to get your book, they want to learn more about how to be hospitable in their life, what is the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, I'm over on Instagram at abby.kuykendall. Kuykendall is kind of weird, but it is Kuykendall. You can probably see it on the show notes.
Yep.
But I also have a pretty active text thread with my group. And so if you want
Okay.
to text biscuits to 501-833-6045, you can be in a text group, and I'm pretty active on that and love to connect with people that way. So
Okay.
if you want to break through the noise, if you just want to consume content, Instagram. If you want to break through the noise and actually have a conversation, text message is the way to go. But I also have an audiobook, so there's no excuses not to read and learn about hospitality. So if you
Yeah.
want to hear about it, or if you want to consume it on a long road trip, you can
There you
anywhere
go.
you get an audiobook.
Yes, that is exciting. So yes, they can read it and they can listen to
Listen to
it.
it. Yeah.
Yes, and check you
Yeah.
out on Instagram and all of that. Well, Abby, thank you so much. Thank you for coming and sharing with us today and for your passion for hospitality and creating community. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you.